material, starring ECW legends Jerry Lynn and Mikey Whipwreck. Now, let's welcome your host, Mike Freland.
Welcome to the program. My name is Mike Freland. He is the Ritt. We are sitting in for Jerry and Mikey again this week. This is Front Row Material Live. Happy Tuesday evening to you. Hope you all are doing well in your neck of the woods. We got a big show for you tonight, including a great guest here. Lufisto is going to be joining us. Cannot wait to get into her career and talk about all things wrestling. But first, let me say, how you doing, Ritt? How are you, buddy?
Well, I'm going to call you out right from the beginning. Doing a lot better than Megs is doing right now.
Yeah. Wow. That was... I have never been flipped off 4 times through the front window of the house. 4 times I got the bird. She... We'll get into it later. But once again, kids, remember in any relationship, it's 50-50, right? It's 50-50. The guy does 50, she does 50. Unfortunately, her 50 somehow becomes part of my 50. We'll get into that a little later on. But anyway, I digress. How are you doing?
Not too bad. I'm ready for action-packed and exciting night tonight.
You better calm yourself down. I'm ready to get wild and crazy. Are you all right there, Ritt? Have you you've been kicking on Grandpa's cough syrup since we talked about an hour ago?
No.
Are you sure about that?
I'm perfectly fine.
You seem mellow, my friend. You really do.
Hey, I'm just trying to be, as the great words of Mikey Whipwreck, professional around
You're trying to be professional. That's right. Well, you know what? Let's be as professional as we can. Let's bring in a real professional, somebody who does something that is way more important than what we do. All we do is talk about wrestling. She actually does the hard, heavy lifting. Let's bring in Lufisto. What is going on?
Hi. You guys are so funny. You sound like an old married couple.
Well, I tell you what, at this stage of the game, we pretty much are.
He's the old and I'm just the couple.
Wow. Unbelievable. But it is so good to see your smiling face. How is life treating you?
Not too bad. It's actually really hot in Quebec, which is impressive. Everybody thinks it's all cold in Canada, but now it's been like, my God, like 105 degrees. If I change the Celsius to Fahrenheit, it's like really, really hot. So wow. I can't complain. I hate snow, so I actually love this. So maybe that's why I'm smiling. I like summertime, and things are opening up here again. Everything with the COVID, like the restaurants, the shows are starting. The Canadians are in the finals. So
yes, that's a big thing right there.
I know, like everybody's happy, like the whole Montreal, like the city of Montreal dancing in the streets and people grabbing cones to pretend it's the Stanley Cup and walking around and screaming and hugging each other. And after the year and a half of, being afraid to be close to someone, it's refreshing, and it's good for the soul.
No, I could not agree with you more. It's this last year and a half has been, and I've said this to Ritt before, just in conversations, it's brought the best out of people, and it's also brought the worst out of people. And it's very interesting in life to find, when the chips are down, what people are truly your friends, what people are, there for you and want to support you through a difficult time, and what people are just no, stay away. Fear's crazy, but you know what? I'm glad that we've turned that corner, and we are back to some level of normalcy.
Yeah, it was about time. I was
agree.
Getting nuts.
But we love Canada. I mean, we have so many listeners who are from Canada. I've never gotten a chance to go to Canada yet, but I've had a lot of. That's not nice. They wouldn't let me in. What are you talking about?
They won't let you. They'll take one look at you until you turn around. You're too American.
No, it's more that the border's not fully open right now for non-essential traveling.
See, I'm non-essential.
Everybody's welcome. We're nice people. We say sorry all the time, and we say thank you.
Man, come on now. You're really going to sit there and take his side?
I'm just defending the Canadian people.
That's right. Thank you so much. So it's so exciting to obviously get to talk wrestling again because, as you said before, for the last, year and a half, we haven't gotten a chance to do that. Shows are opening back up again. So what is life looking like for you right now?
Right now, things are slowly moving back. Like, I haven't wrestled since the pandemic because there was no shows here, and with all the borders closed, I had plans to go back to maybe Germany. I had maybe other places in Europe, and everything fell off. And I was going somewhere in the States as well. Didn't work out. So really, for the past year and a half, it was just no wrestling at all. But the thing that I did is I watched a lot of wrestling. Throughout the year, I kind of stopped being a fan because I had no time. I was focusing on my matches and on helping others and doing all kinds of other wrestling stuff. But I think with the pandemic, I was able to actually sit down and go back to, why do I do this? What do I love about this? And I started watching, a little bit of the current product. And I like what ROH did with the Pure tournament. I thought that was really refreshing and a good way to work with the fact that there was no fans. I thought it was really smart. So I got really hooked into that. But I got back into watching what made me love wrestling, like old stuff from All Japan and Noah and some World Championship Wrestling, some old NWA, like really going back to the basic and really appreciating wrestling as a whole and its history.
Now, would you say, in once again, this is just, I know people are on both sides of the fence here. I know where I stand. Are you a wrestling or it's sports entertainment? Where do you fall in that category?
No, I'm totally wrestling. Like yesterday, I was watching Jack Briscoe versus Dory Funk Jr.
Nice.
I love wrestling, and I understand, I don't even love the sports entertainment. I like to say wrestling with a little extra. I don't mind the characters are cool or storylines, but I like my wrestling to be, once the bell ring, it's all business. I like it to look like it's a fight, it's the struggle, it's a competition. Yes. So yeah, I'm definitely more of a wrestling person. Yep.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100% here. I think there's a portion of the audience who really gets into that over the top. I almost want to call it Disney type of theatrics. And then you have a portion of the audience who, like you said before, hey, it's cool to have a personality, but when we get in there, none of this, malarkey, if you want to call it that. Let's just get down to it and let's see who the better athlete is and who's going to win.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I love people like Tim Thatcher and Walter and Jonathan Gresham. Like, they go in there and it's business. Like Tracy Williams, Josh Woods, like most of them are real shooters. And I like to look at a wrestler, male or female, and I can say, like, they could really kick my ass. I believe what they're doing. I like that they, keep that magic and that doubt that if you meet them somewhere, they can really kick your ass.
Would you also agree that we've heard this from many wrestlers, that selling is so underappreciated as far as the element of a match in itself, and people really do not put the time in to learn how to do that properly, and that's really what kind of takes people out of the element. Something big happens, and then boom, they're right back up again. It kind of defeats the purpose of why your opponent did that. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. And I blame myself as well for doing that. Once in a while, I will watch my matches and I will, I did not register that enough. It should have been more, because everything when it comes to wrestling is about emotions. And one of my teachers years back, like, told me, I don't care how many flips you do. What's going on here? That's the money. That's the money. That's why people like Terry Funk, like, he was doing promo and he was almost crying, and you believe them. And someone like Dusty Rhodes could talk in some crowds to get, in. Like, it was like, because the emotion, it was real, it was genuine, it was not scripted as much as it is today. And a lot of it came from the heart. And it's the same thing with wrestling. You want them to feel your pain, you want them to feel the struggle. And if they feel it, then they'll get into the match. And I always say there's four people in the match. There's you, your opponent, the referee, and there's the crowd.
Yep.
And it's really a teamwork of those four key elements. And by selling, and if you do it well and you do it loud enough, I think sound is really important in wrestling. And that's one thing that usually that bothers me. You see a lot of people wrestle and they will get the facials, but there's no sound coming out. So person in the first row might see your pain, but the one sitting in the back can't hear it and can't see it either. So you have to create sound so people can feel like what's going on. So definitely, yeah, selling is, my God, it's a big part of wrestling.
Well, first things first, our good friend Mikey Whipwreck actually had a comment posted up there that you were the first female wrestler that he wanted to work with in a match.
Oh my God, I would love that. I love Mikey. He's one of those. I felt when I was watching him like he was never afraid of. Maybe he wasn't inside, because I know when I did hardcore, sometimes I was going for a spot and I was like, "What am I doing?" But I would do it anyway. But I felt he was so brave, because maybe I'm wrong, but I think he's one of those guys that could not say no and did everything.
Yep.
And I'm also guilty of that. And looking back, I'm like, ooh, that spot was stupid. You should have said no. I'm glad it turns out okay, but there were so many risks. And yeah, definitely it takes some courage to do all these, spots and crazy, I don't want to say stunts, but it's almost a stunt. Like you go in there and you're hoping for the best, and then if it turns out good, again, well, good for you.
So you said that you didn't really get to work at all during the pandemic, but did you watch any of the product at all during the pandemic?
Yeah, I've watched a lot of Ring of Honor. I've watched I try to watch everything AEW, but there's so much stuff that at one point I could not follow. I've watched all the pay-per-views though. I would watch every pay-per-view, whether it's WWE or Impact or NWA. Like once there's a pay-per-view, we always watch at home. That's like our Sunday or Saturday thing where we just sit down and we just watch all the pay-per-views. I can't really keep up with every single TV shows because you have Impact, you have Ring of Honor, you got Women's Ring of Honor, there's NWA Power, and then AEW Elevation, Dark. Like I tried for a while, and then I was like, I'm watching wrestling every day, nonstop. I have to do things. And so, yeah, I did, but I kind of stopped a little bit right now because it was taking way too much of time. There's a lot of wrestling, which is great, but I can't watch it all.
So what was your thoughts when you're watching all this and there was nobody in the crowd? Like, how would you have put a match together, not being able to feed off the crowd with the interaction and everything?
I would have turned it into really a competition where it's just me and my opponents. To the opposite of what I was saying before, when you work in front of a crowd, you include them. But that's one thing that I saw on some matches. People were working the crowd and there's no crowd. And that's where you need to switch up things and adapt, where it needs to become more of a competition where you focus on what's going on with the referee and you look more at your opponent than the actual crowd. Because usually you'll do a shot, you'll look at the crowd and you'll be, if you're a babyface, you'll be happy and look for approval. But now if there's no crowd, so you can't go, wah! And it looks, I thought it looked a little bit weird. And so yeah, you focus on the opponent and the hold, and instead of looking at the crowd because there's none, you look at your opponent, you look at the hold you're doing, you look at the referee, you talk to the referee. So you use your immediate environment to create magic. And when you sell, since you can't, there's no crowd, you do it to the camera, so at least people who are watching can feel what's happening too, but through the camera.
Growing up in Canada, I'm sure that you're kind of you're pro-Canadian wrestlers, and was there anybody from your home country that you really gravitated towards? I mean, because a lot of great stars have come out of Canada. Anybody in particular that you looked at and said, man, really respect what they do, and I would love to maybe at some point work some of what they do into what I do.
My favorite was Owen Art. I loved Owen. I thought he could do anything. He's definitely one of the trendsetters when it comes to eye flying, but he was also really smart in the eye flying he was doing. It was not like spots. Everything was placed in a spots of the match where it made sense. He was good at selling. He was good at being a mean heel. Like he would get people to hate him. And like his technique was flawless. I didn't see it that way when I was younger, but I just loved them. And now, growing up and watching the matches again, now I see the little details he would do, like between the moves, the way he would look at the crowd, the way he would look at his opponent, the way he would connect with the referee. And yeah, I just think he was just amazing.
Would you say there's definitely a contrast between, and I mean this in the best way, the old school and the modern day? Do you think that there are things that got lost or that just didn't get picked up by the newer generation? Things like you talked about before, things that Owen would do, things that the prior generation who started out in the 80s and the 90s do that you don't see post 2000?
When we say less is more, definitely. Sometimes it's better to do a little bit less of your spots and milk them, sell them. I feel a lot of things are done too quickly. Like sometimes they will do chain wrestling, and I'm guilty of that too. Especially when I started, my teacher he kept telling me, "Slow down, I can't see anything." But chain wrestling, for example, is beautiful when you actually see, what they did to get underneath that arm and what they did to reverse the hold. And if it's too quick, it's like they go from a headlock to a hammer lock and then go down, but it's so quick you don't see the beauty of it.
Right.
So that's something, and some of the new people will do it, but in general, that's really one thing. Too quick, too much. Sometimes just remove a few things and make it count.
You'd mentioned that your teacher trainer, would give you some tips and whatnot. So let's go back to the 90s, the late 90s. So how did it all get started? How did you decide, at that point in your life, you were like, okay, this is one direction I could go in. This is a direction, wrestling.
I was actually playing in a band, and my drummer says, you need to see this guy. He's burying people. He's building casket, talking about The Undertaker. And he was in his feud with Yokozuna. So we're talking 94. And I got hooked immediately. I was like, I thought he was so impressive, interesting. I liked the character, but I also like every single little detail he was doing. And in the same period of time, there was the feud with Alundra Blaze and Bull Nakano.
Bull Nakano, yep.
Bull Nakano, and I was like, wow, these girls can go. And I really fell in love, I think, with wrestling there. And through them, one of my friends was, it's back in the days of tape trading. He was ordering tapes from Japan and wherever, and I don't know who was selling tapes in the States. But he was like, we were watching Japanese wrestling. It's like, you like Bull Nakano and you like Medusa. Well, not Medusa, but Alundra Blaze back then. So he's like, look at that. And I saw this girl named Akira Okudo. And I'm like, I want to do this. It was so different from what I thought of what women's wrestling was. Like, I've seen women's wrestling before, and a lot of hair pulling, a lot of scratching, and it was not everybody, but in my head that was women's wrestling. But when I saw Alundra Bull and then the likes of Akira Okudo, I'm like, this is so much more. This can be so much bigger. The women can fight, the women can be dangerous, and actually I thought they were better than the guys when I was watching Japanese women wrestling. And that's exactly where I was like, I want to do this. I really want to do this.
Well, your career started out, a little bit rough. I was telling Freland about earlier today, where you actually was booked in a main event against a man that, you know, it's 2002 and it was, you know, not allowed.
Way
And
ahead
then-
of your time. Way ahead of your time with that
Yeah.
when it comes to the whole intergender thing. I mean, wow.
I
And-
was wrestling guys like I think at the end of 97 like I did a mixed tag, but then 98 I was already wrestling one-on-one guys, and by I think the summer of 98, I don't remember the exact date, but I already had my first male championship. So I was a cruiserweight champion, and by 99 I had like another one, the provincial championship. So I started, there was like no other girls than me, like they would come and go, and there was only one or two in my area. So I just got like, if I want to wrestle, I need to wrestle the guys. And it got me so much trouble because people thought like, oh, look at her, she wants, you know, she thinks she's better than us, and the guys didn't want to wrestle the girls. But I kept on pushing, and because people wanted me to be a manager, and I'm like, no, I train with the guys and I want to do this, and I'm a wrestler, always having like a Kiro Kudo in my head, and I'm like, I can do this. And yeah, I started to go to Ontario, and I was doing like, I started doing hardcore in 99. So by then I ended up in a promotion called the Hardcore Wrestling Federation, and another promoter got in touch with them to book, it was a table death match. It was a main event. It was a tag team. I was the only girl in the match. And there was a complaint sent to the Athletic Commission of Ontario. And they literally called the promoter. And if this girl is wrestling, we're, you know, revoking your license, and you're going to have a fee to pay. And so from that moment, all the promoters, especially in Ontario, was like, we can't book you. And it was such an old law. Like some of them were not even aware of it, but it was there. And I didn't even know myself until that happened. And yeah, from that moment, I'm like, this is so wrong. They're telling me I can't do something because of my gender. So I called the human rights and I filed the complaint, and we went to court. It took like 3 years and a half of papers, phone call, lots of money. And yeah, not only did the law was removed, but I took the whole athletic commission down. There's no more athletic commission when it comes to wrestling in Ontario.
That in itself should get way more acknowledgement in press and the accolades that it so richly deserves because of what you did for the business. I mean, that's a huge thing. Not only did you just say, okay, I get it, but then you said, okay, I get it. Well, guess what? I'm coming after you now. And I think that takes a lot of courage and a lot of guts, and it shows the type of person you are. So I really respect the fact that you went through all that.
Thank you. And yeah, I was like 22 years old, but I was like, I've always fought for, you know, not for myself, but I wanted women's wrestling to be recognized, and I wanted us to be seen as equal, and you know, to choose whoever we fight. People were like, you know how people say like, oh, intergender is domestic violence. No, domestic violence, you do not choose that to happen.
Correct.
Wrestling, it's your choice as a woman, as a human being, to go in there. You are aware what you're doing. You are trained to do it. And so, I mean, it's your choice to wrestle whoever you want. So yeah, I've always been a big, when there's some injustice, like I get really, really upset in anything. And I'm like, oh, I gotta do something. Sometimes it's annoying and I hate myself sometimes. Like, why do you get involved into this? But if I feel something is wrong, then it gets me. So, and I have to do something about it.
So, go ahead, Freland.
No, you're fine.
Okay. So, what got you to come to the United States from Canada? Like, you know, how'd you get the contacts? Who contacted who first?
The first matches I had were in Vermont. It's actually a promotion from, it was ETWA. They're still going there in Vermont. And they called me and they had me wrestle one of their top guys. That was like the first time I went to the United States. And then after, I ended up working for Tony Atlas in EWA in Maine. It was the Eastern Wrestling Alliance. And I started as a valet because they were like, well, we're not sure women and men, so we got to start slowly. So I was a valet, and then one day I turn on my wrestler. Steve Ramsey was his name, and then I was just a heel and kicking butt. Like, and that's how it started, really. But the big, I would say, breakout is I was wrestling in a tag team with the Sexy Eddie in Montreal for IWS, and CZW, heard about us. It's like, oh, there's a girl that does hardcore, bring her in. And I ended up at CZW, and my God, I think the following show, like, I did a match, and John Zandig looked at me and he went like, okay, there's something there. And I think the following show or the other one, because I had an introduction, I had a match, and then I think the third show ended up in All Out Wars, where I beat Kevin Steen. I pinned Kevin Steen, I should say, because it was like a elimination with all kinds of people. And I ended up the CZW Iron Man champion. And from there, like, everything went crazy.
Let me ask you this. I mean, obviously from your battles to make women equal in Canada, and then obviously that kind of permeated out through the different promoters and whatnot. What were some of the things that you heard about during that time when you were fighting to be able to have females compete with males? Was there anything you heard from other wrestlers, maybe in the locker rooms, or people reaching out to you saying thank you for what you did, or anything such as that?
Not really. At the beginning, it was more like, oh, she's trouble. Look at what she's doing. It's like, I think a lot of people did not get what I was trying to do. And it was it was kind of negative at the first time because, oh, look at her. Like, she doesn't get what she wants. So she's going against the government. And, I would go to the promoters also when they didn't want me to wrestle. And I would have discussions where, why do you don't want me to wrestle? It's like, well, you're a girl and guys don't want to wrestle girls. And sometimes I ended up working with guys that didn't want to work with me. So they would punch me as hard as they could and pull my hair and stretch me and break my nose. And so at the beginning, it was like really, it was pretty much negative. But then when the commission fell and everybody was like, okay, the whole thing fell, we don't have to pay a license anymore, because the fees were ridiculous. Wrestlers had to pay for licenses every year. Wow. We didn't get anything from it. There was no one at the shows. Sometimes you pay for a commission, but a doctor is going to be there, or there's going to be things, some insurance that if something happens to the promotion, there's some sort of protection. Right. There was nothing. It was just like pay for you to do a show. And so with the years, I remember when the commission fell, I think Allie Cherry Bomb emailed me and thanked me for doing that, because now they could wrestle against whoever they wanted in Ontario. And more recently, C4 Wrestling, which is a promotion I wrestle for in Ottawa. I was talking to the promoter, and he's like, you should realize that a lot of things that are happening today is because of you, because we could not afford all the bureaucracy and the fees and everything. And there's a lot of people wrestling today, and there's a lot of promotions that are alive because you went to battle for the wrestlers and the female wrestlers. So thank you. So he told me that. So that was pretty cool. It's always cool when it happens. And Jody Threat also, when we wrestled, she hugged me and she said something like along the lines of, if I'm here and the girls are wrestling, is because of you. So I think with time, when people learn the story, because I feel a lot of people don't even know about it. So when they learn what happened and what needed to be done, there's a few of them they're going to come to me and say thank you.
Well, I can guarantee you Sami Callihan versus Tessa Blanchard would have never happened, because there's so many things that when you look at the world of wrestling, that you may not even know the stories of why we got to where we are today. Mm-hmm. Some people think, oh, well, this company is a revolutionary in wrestling. In reality, they're not. They're basically just taking a concept, or they're taking the idea off of what someone else did and putting their own twist on it. And I feel like it's very disparaging to do that to the people who actually were the trailblazers.
Yeah, I would say it is because so many times I've read, this is the first time a woman wins a world title. This is the first time this is happening in intergender. And I'm like, I did that in 98. I did that in 2001. I did that in 99. I did that in 2000. It's sad to say, but no TV, no history, because people don't take the time, because if you Google, you'll find some stuff from the past. But I just feel if they don't research much, or they don't talk to other people who would know, I feel their research are very limited when there's such a rich history of when you talk about intergender, you should talk about Andy Kaufman, you should talk about Mildred Burke, you should talk about so many, like Miss Jackie. There's so many women, or even China. Sometimes I don't even hear her name, and I'm like, China, she was on the biggest stage, and you do not mention her.
I know.
I feel they. I don't know if they purposely forget the history, or they're kind of acting. I don't know. I feel everybody wants to say they're the first at doing something, but all the women and the men who fought tooth and nail and before, they should get acknowledged. To know where you're going, you got to know where you came from. So, and I think that's something that people forget, unfortunately.
Yeah, very well said with that. Ritt and I have talked about this, and I've talked about this to Jerry, and God, there's so many different conversations that spawn from other things that have happened. But when you talk about, women in wrestling, one in particular company, which will remain nameless, it takes credit for everything, including sliced bread. But the other companies, like you said before, were doing really good women's wrestling. Gail Kim is incredible what she was doing. TNA, when it was referred to as that, when they were doing the knockouts, it had that title, but ODB was doing her thing as well. And you had so many women, Angelina Love and Velvet Sky, they were doing these things. And it's like you said before, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. Or if someone didn't see it, it never happened. And I feel like that's sad that you're picking and choosing the way you want to remember history, when the reality is a simple Google search will tell you otherwise. Yeah,
Google or books, or when you're not sure, there's still veterans out there that do know the stories, that were there, that saw everything happening. I don't know how hard it is to send an email to someone like my God, like Jazz or something, like someone who's been there, who knows, or the likes of Medusa, Mickey James, Gail Kim, they're all out there. They know the history. They've been there. They've seen it. They've seen the struggles. And you talk about the Now Cows. There's also Shimmer.
Yeah,
that's one of the, if not the first, company who took women seriously as athletes. The storylines were not about, oh, I'm a beautiful girl, and there's the nerdy girl, and the popular girl wants to, beat her up. It was a competition. It was athletes, like women athletes. And I can't remember what their motto was, but honor, skills, and something else. I forget right now. But and some other promotions then after that, followed the same kind of road. Like I'm thinking about Femme Fatale here in Canada. There's Shine. There's in England, Saraya Knight has been doing the same thing with Bellatrix. All the girls in Australia, and of course Japanese and Mexico. They have such a great history when it comes to women's wrestling. But I feel sometimes when it's not on TV, people either don't know about it or don't want to hear about it, or if it happened in another country than the United States, it didn't happen. I remember people were like emailing me, it's like, oh, this thing happened. Did it happen before? I'm like, yeah, did it? Yeah, but it did not happen in the United States, right? So I'm like, yeah, I did that also. Oh, okay. I'm like, wherever it happened, somebody did something, just acknowledge it and just
Yes.
embrace it. And if somebody else does the same, then embrace it as well. And my God, like praise whoever is doing something to make this sports better and this everything better for the women and even for the guys too. Like back in the day, it was more about, are you tough enough to be in wrestling? And we would get beat up and they would see if we were strong enough mentally. Now everything has changed where there's great school everywhere and you have a lot of veterans around that are ready to help. And back then, my God, I wish I had somebody to guide me this way. I mean, it changed. Some of the things changed for the not so good, but some things like that really changed for the better for the younger generation.
Well, a lot of women, you see them, everybody's like, that's just a pretty face. You were a little bit different. You wanted to embrace the hardcore style along with the pretty face. Now, what got you into the hardcore style?
The hardcore has just happened. I was wrestling in Montreal and in an intergender match, and I was wrestling one of the top heels here, and he was known to use chairs and use all kinds of stuff like that. So I was fighting him, and we just ended up in the crowd, and chairs went flying, and cookie sheets and tables, and people went nuts. There was almost a riot. It was so crazy, and it was like, wow, this is amazing. Like the reaction and everything. And one thing that really got me into hardcore is once I did it first, and they were like, "Oh, why do you do this? That's not for girls. You're gonna scratch your head and blah blah." I was like, "Shut up!" I was like, every time someone told me I can do something because I'm a woman, it pissed me off, and I wanted to do more and more. So the next match, let's add some barbed wire, and the other one, let's have thumbtacks, and then let's go to the lights, and then end up in the cage of death. Who knows? In tournaments and king of the death match and queen of the death match, and it was really more about always doing more and proving people wrong. Which, when you think about it, it's like, is it a good reason to do things? Probably not, but I felt it was so necessary back then because people didn't take women's wrestling seriously. We were attractions. We were a little bonus on the card, or unfortunately, like the P break or whatever you want to call it. And it just became a mission for me to prove people wrong. And it's like, no, you don't miss my match because you're going to miss something good. And yeah, it was a little bit of obsessive.
Well, speaking of, you brought it up, deathmatch. 2007, Queen of the Deathmatch, IWA Mid-South. I was out there 2011 when Rebecca Payne beat Mickey Knuckles, the person that you beat in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was a great promotion out there. Ann ran a good show. Mickey Knuckles is, phenomenally nice person in the locker room.
Tough. She's tough.
Oh, How did you, in the locker room, how'd that all come about? And then actually, how the night went on?
It's funny that you mentioned that because I spoke to Mickey yesterday, and she was just asking me how I was doing and that she missed me. And I miss her too because she's really my hardcore sister from another mister. We just hit it off right away.
That's a t-shirt.
My hardcore sister from another mister. And the thing is, I was doing hardcore. I had been for a while, and I was doing it pretty much by myself on my side of the country, and Mickey started to do her thing, and it's like we were very much alike but apart. And then when we got together, it was like really finding that relative that you were looking for, and didn't know where she was. And that's really what happened. The match you see at Queen of the Death Match 97 is our first match together. It was instant chemistry. It's like we just went out there and we fought. Like it was just natural. Everything came easily. And yeah, literally my hardcore sister.
So let me ask you this: when I say the word death match, What are things that come to mind when someone says, Lufisto, I'm going to book you. We're going to do a death match. What is the first thing that comes through your mind?
No. I haven't done a death match since 2007, actually. I've been pretty much a lot more involved in anything that has to do with pure wrestling. I will do, once in a while those no holds bar with tables and chairs and whatnot, but nothing with, nothing like I did before. And I think I did everything I had to do. Sometimes I get the itch where it's like, oh, another one would be cool, but I feel if something like that would happen, it would need to be part of a long storyline where the match actually means something.
Right.
I feel nowadays, I don't know if I can say that on that probably, but everybody's blowing their loads way too quick.
Yeah, no, you're right.
There's no long storyline that explains why you hate this person so much that you want to make him or her bleed. It's like right away into a big match, and then after it's like everything's backward. And so yeah, if I would do another one, it would have to mean something and be part of a storyline where once we get there, it's because there's nothing else we can do. We have to end this in the most violent way. But for death matches, I mean, I've been there. I know what they're like. They bring you a thrill, and it's really something unique. Like, you deal with pain and you got to push through. It's really a way to push your own limits, and a lot of people, I'm sure, do it for that reason. I know I was. When I hear deathmatch, also I hear, be careful, because the spots you're doing now are going to come back to haunt you in about 10 years.
Right.
There's a lot of things, falling on weapons, on weird angled ladders or whatever. You might feel fine, the next day or so, but, it adds up. And with the years, your body suffers from it. So you just have to be aware of it. What you do now, you'll feel it in a couple of years.
It's so funny that you talk about long-term storylines and long-term storytelling and how that is kind of overlooked nowadays. Is there any storylines that you can name off the top of your head that you felt like, wow, that was a really well done? It wasn't too fast, it wasn't too slow. They did it, they paced it right, and the payoff was great.
That's a very good question. For some reason, what comes to mind is, because we talked about it a little bit earlier, the Bret Hart versus Owen Hart feud.
Yes.
Started slowly. They were both wrestling on each side, and they came together and did some tag teams. And then there was that Survivor Series where Owen was tired of being in the shadow and he kicked Bret Hart's leg. And then there's the win at WrestleMania 10, but then Bret wins the championship, so Owens even
comes out at the end. Yes.
And then, it was such a slow build up. And then I think at one point they ended up in a cage, and all this at the end to come back together and, reform the Hart Foundation. It's over years, but we were invested in the story.
What would you say is different now as far as why promotions might not be as invested in long-term storylines? Do you feel like it's the instant gratification, social media world we live in today, where got to hit them now, got to get them something now? It's about what this quarter-hour rating is and what is this. Therefore, if we do some long-term storytelling, they might not hang around long enough to really invest themselves into something that is going to have a greater payoff.
It's definitely one of the reasons you want right now. You want ratings. You want what's important are the numbers. But the thing is, you might have a good rating this week, but if your show's not too good, then it's going to go down. But if you invest people and they want to watch, like a soap opera, they want to watch every week, then it's going to go up. Remember when I talk about my drummer talking about The Undertaker? He was so invested that he got me to look, and then that was one more person that was watching the show. And then I talked about it to other people. And then fans, the fans would build up like because of people like me and my drummer talking about something. Oh my God, you got to watch this. You got to watch this. Now it's like boom, 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 everything. And then the following week, there's no continuity. Somebody who was healed last week now is babyface, or you don't know. It's really hard to follow. And so that's definitely one of the reasons. And I feel right now everybody wants to say, I'm the first who did that.
Yeah.
Oh, you saw it first here. And because of that, everything is too much too soon. Like and that goes for talent, that goes for storyline, that goes for big matches. Like everybody wants to be like, oh, we pushed that person first. Oh, we did this first. And I feel because everybody's kind of greedy of saying we did it, everything is too rushed. Like, yeah, it definitely, I think that's one of the main reasons.
Do you like the idea of the different promotions working together? I mean, I know originally it was this promotion doesn't talk about this promotion and this promotion doesn't acknowledge that this one exists. But now with Tony Khan, and it just didn't start with Tony Khan. I mean, there were other promotions that worked together in the past, but I'm using this for a contextual reference here. Do you think it's a good idea for promotions to work with each other? Or do you think at the end of the day, a promotion needs to completely just focus on their own, take care of in-house stuff, and then go from there?
I say yes and no. Yes, for the simple fact that sometimes you'll get that match, for the fans that they would like to see that you can't see otherwise, like a dream match. But one thing that I do question right now is, and it might be me being really old school, but one thing I was taught is like, know your value. If I go to a show and you're there and I pay $20 to get in, and then I see you on another show that I have to pay $5 to get in,
right?
Then I might go to the other one.
Yep.
And I see you often, so your value goes down. I don't know if it makes sense the way I'm explaining it, but right now I see the same talent on 1, 2, 3 different TV shows. So if I watch this person on this one, why would I watch the other one?
Right.
So, it's really, and that's where I think in the long run, it's going to hurt people because I'm just going to say a name like that. Let's say I want to see Bailey. I have to watch WWE. I have to, because that's the only place she's at. But right now I see some girls wrestling. I saw girls doing Ring of Honor and then Dark and then other things. And you're like, they're everywhere. And that's for guys too. I say girls because I think I'm more aware of what's going on with the women's divisions, but they're everywhere. There's no rarity. Like I feel they do not protect themselves. And on the other hand, I'm like, well, it's work. Go for it. Get your exposure, get your money. But you're like, but in the end, in the long run, I don't know if it's a good thing.
I remember in the 80s, they would say they only put Hulk Hogan on certain shows around the country, and he would main event the pay-per-views. So you would get that tease on TV. You might see him once a month, but that was the show you had to watch because that led up to what the pay-per-view was going to be. And my God, you want to see him, you got to buy the pay-per-view. So from a business model, and like you said before, I don't want to say not wearing out your welcome or becoming so accessible that it doesn't make it unique anymore.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I get that completely. 100%.
Yeah, and I don't know, but how can you tell someone, well, don't go there? And it's really something you have to think about and make a decision for yourself and make sure that wherever you go is where you're going to be presented the best, and that's where you're going to grow as a wrestler, and where you're going to learn, and that you'll be surrounded with people who can make you better. Because wrestling, people who are better than you will make you a better wrestler. That's the best way to learn. So it's a tricky question. Some good, some bad.
I was thinking about this when it comes to women's wrestling when you were mentioning it earlier, and there's a promotion that I really enjoy watching, and that's Mission Pro Wrestling, and they're out of Texas, and it's a female, promotion, and I think women's wrestling is definitely something that should be on par with the guys. I just feel like there's certain promotions that take women's wrestling back a few steps, if you know what I mean. Instead of just letting these women be talented and athletic and put on great matches, I guess they feel like in some ways they need to enhance that, or they need to do something else with that person instead of just letting them be themselves. Are you of the belief a persona is okay, but don't go too terribly far with it? Don't venture too far away from the person that they really are, because at that point, then it's almost like having that wrestler live a lie that they don't feel it. It's not unique, so therefore they're not going to be able to sell it as well.
Oh, definitely. The closer you are to reality, the better you'll get people to connect with you. And I can say that because I did that mistake. For years, I was a super hardcore anime. I was not even watching animes. I love the fact that they were cute and violent at the same time. So that was the main purpose of the gimmick. But it was so far away from who I am. And I really feel in the end, it stopped me from going more places and maybe higher on cards, because people thought I was, a funny character and I could not be taken fully seriously. And the gimmick was fun, but I feel it was, too cartoony, and there's nothing more. People wonder why the Attitude Era was such a big thing, because people could relate. They could relate to Stone Cold Steve Austin. They could relate to DX somehow. It was real characters, and it everything came from the heart. Like I said, not fully scripted. So for the women, I think women wrestlers are unique in a way where they all have a different story, and the story to me is the money. Why are you a professional? What's your background? Why are you here? And just there is a character, because there's a real person. That's one thing that I love that Ring of Honor is doing with the men's division. They have those sit-down interviews where I'm a professional wrestler and I train there and I do this because, and it's all real stories. And that's what I feel is missing in women's wrestling. And one thing about Mission Pro, it is ran by a woman wrestler.
Yes.
I think things are going to be awesome once a woman is in charge. And right now it's happening. Mickie James is doing it with NWA. And I really feel, and just the way she talks, her passion, you can feel it. She wants things to change. She wants things to be better. She wants the women to be taken seriously. So through her, I see so much hope. I think she's the one who's going to do it right.
Well, Lufisto, it's that time where Freland hates when I ask this question.
Why? What?
Hey.
All right.
Freland,
I'm just going to I'll just sit here.
This is the #1 rated segment we have.
Oh, really?
Oh my God. If you believe that, then you believe I'm dealing with anorexia.
Okay, here we go. Hot Tub Time Machine. You can go back in the time to any match you want. You take someone out and insert yourself in the match. What would it be?
Oh,
and I've been told maybe I should, when I book you guys, I should sit there and add that in there so you have plenty of time to think of.
Sean Waltman said he couldn't answer the question. So we are hoping that an intelligent, attractive woman like yourself is able to answer this question.
Freland, I already got her booked. You don't need to sit there and butter her up.
Well, I wanted to come back for rounds 2 and 3. I'm digging this right here.
Oh God, that's a good question. Oh God. I would add myself to the Bull Nakano and Medusa to a 3-way so I could wrestle them both. Lord, which match is like such a good... I'd love to wrestle Mick Foley. So let's remove the Undertaker from Hell in the Cell, and I'm gonna go in there.
This girl, first of all, is the toughest woman I've ever met in my life. Second of all, she's willing to go into Hell in a Cell 90s. Oh my God! Wow, I would not get in the ring with you. I just hand you my wallet. I'd say, here, I can't do it. Wow.
And don't worry, if he hands you the wallet, there's nothing in it.
Wow. You trying to call me cheap again? I can't. I do want to ask you this question, and I promise I'll make this brief. FMW. It sounds like you've been a connoisseur of the FMW as well.
Yeah, I was watching the exploding rings and the piranhas around the ring. Yeah, I saw those.
They're taking a boat to the ring. I remember that the match. I was like, "Why are you? Oh my! This has just gotten serious." Yeah. Wow. There is so many more things that we obviously could talk about. Is there any chance we could twist your arm and bring you back again to do a part 2?
I'm sure. Yes.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
She's definitely hardcore to put up with this punishment.
I love this. This girl's tough as nails. She takes on the Canadian government. She tells people to go screw themselves. I'm going to take on the men. She smiles when she talks about barbed wire and chairs. Holy cow. Wow. Oh my. Where can people find you on social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that jazz? Where can people find you?
The easiest way is actually to go on my website, Lufisto.com. All the links are there. And real quick, it's going to be at Lufisto on Twitter, Wounded at Lufisto on Instagram. I do have a Patreon and a Facebook, but definitely go on Lufisto.com. There's merchandise there, news, full story. Wikipedia is not good, so go and see my bio on my website. And I started to add all the matches I had, where it happened, against who, and the results and everything. I think I'm at 2009 or 12 right now. I'm not sure, but I'm going to get there. But all the matches, like, not only because Jericho can do it, I can do it too because I wrote down everything as well.
Nice.
So it's going to be for free on my website.
Perfect, guys. So we're going to post that link to the website. There's where you can get all of her social media information, all of her merchandise information. I have to ask you this question because obviously when you do research, you always want to double check and triple check. Do you have any relation to a very well-known famous individual as well? Singer?
Right. Oh, Robert Goulet.
Yes.
No, but one funny story. Every time when I lived in the United States for 5 years, and when I would say, yeah, my name is Goulet, they're like, I was like Robert. Oh, Robert Goulet. Like, they knew right away. Like, either that or Michel Goulet, who was a Nordiques player, or Rene Goulet in wrestling. I got asked often, are you related to Rene? No, but yeah, the Robert thing I used a lot, so people would write my name the correct way.
Wow. I just saw that and I thought, wait a minute. Do you have a famous uncle or something like that? So not to make it awkward, but
with Will Ferrell, Goulet.
Oh my God, I love it. Well, it has been a pleasure. You are a very engaging person, and we would love to have you back again. And we wish you absolutely nothing but the best. And definitely, let's keep in touch with each other as more things open up, and we can find out more about what's going on with you.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
You got it. Have a great night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.